Don't make this mistake. Billionaire researcher shares top findings. Don't make this mistake. Seriously, if you want to succeed, if you want to build wealth, if you want to create the kind of life that you look back on in 10, 20, 30 years and say, that was the moment everything changed, then pay attention. Because what I'm about to share with you doesn't come from motivational posters, wishful thinking, or surface-level advice. It comes from the world's top billionaire researchers, the people who work behind the scenes studying how ultra-successful individuals think, act, decide, and grow. The people who analyze the difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck. And here's the shocking part. Most people fail in life not because of lack of intelligence, talent, or opportunity, but because of one mistake, one foundational misunderstanding, one blind spot that silently sabotages their wealth, their confidence, their performance, and their future potential. And today, you and I are going to dismantle that mistake completely, then reconstruct a new level of clarity, power, and prosperity inside you. So let's dive in. Here is what billionaire research actually reveals, and why it changes everything. Topic 1. The fatal mistake that quietly keeps people broke. There is a moment, usually early in life, but sometimes later, when a person unknowingly decides whether they will live at the level of survival or ascend to the level of prosperity. And the decision doesn't happen dramatically. It doesn't come with fireworks or a voice from the sky announcing destiny. It happens quietly, subtly, internally. It happens the moment someone starts believing that their current circumstances define the limits of their future. This is the fatal mistake billionaire researchers talk about. This is the error that destroys more dreams than failure ever could. Because as soon as a person believes this is just the way life is, they unconsciously accept a ceiling that does not actually exist. Think about it. Every billionaire interviewed in longitudinal success studies, every top performer whose career was analyzed, every high-impact CEO who built a global empire, they all had something in common. They hit moments of uncertainty, scarcity, even crisis. But they never concluded that those moments were the definition of their capacity. They treated circumstances as temporary, not permanent, fluid, not fixed, informational, not identity-based. Meanwhile, the majority of people unknowingly step into a psychological cage. They begin telling themselves the same damaging narrative without even realizing it. I don't come from the right background. I don't have the right contacts. I don't have enough time. I'm not that type of person. Someone like me doesn't get breakthroughs like that. These statements sound harmless on the surface, but they become invisible chains, and those chains guide every choice that follows. Researchers discovered something profound. Wealth doesn't begin with money. It begins with permission. The permission someone gives themselves to believe that more is possible. The permission to try one more time. The permission to reinvent themselves when life demands reinvention. The permission to imagine a future that looks nothing like the present. When you study self-made millionaires, something becomes stunningly clear. They did not start with certainty. They started with a different internal rule. Instead of saying, I can't because I've never done it, they said, I can because someone has done it. And that means it's humanly possible. That tiny shift produces a ripple effect that rewires an entire life. Think of the founders who built global companies from nothing. Almost none of them began with the perfect circumstances society assumes are required. Many of them had childhood hardships, financial struggles, relocations, failures, layoffs, rejections, and setbacks that would have convinced most people to quit. But they refused to interpret hardship as destiny. They interpreted it as a challenge, a sharpening, a preparation for the next level of responsibility. This is why billionaire researchers often say, your belief about what is possible for you determines everything else that follows. It shapes how you respond to opportunities, how you take risks, how you recover from setbacks, how you think during stressful decisions, how you interpret feedback, and how you navigate uncertainty. It even shapes who you allow into your life and who you walk away from. Here's the truth most people never hear. If you don't believe you can expand, your mind won't even notice the paths that would allow you to expand. Opportunities will appear, but they won't look like opportunities to you. They'll look like work, risk, inconvenience, or not the right time. Meanwhile, someone else, Someone with a different internal narrative will see the same situation and immediately recognize it as a gateway to something larger. It all begins in the mind, not in the economy, not in the government, not in the family you came from, not in the place you were born, not in the job title you have today, but in your interpretation of your own potential. One of the most powerful findings from billionaire research is this: people who achieve extraordinary wealth almost always experience a defining moment, a moment where they look at their reality and say, "This is not the final version of me." And from that moment forward, their lives begin to evolve around that identity shift. They develop new habits, new standards, new levels of courage. They invest in new skills. They say yes to challenges. They turn toward discomfort instead of avoiding it. They intentionally choose environments that force growth. And yet, most people do the opposite. They make the mistake of believing that their identity is fixed, their abilities are fixed, their opportunities are fixed, and therefore their outcomes are fixed. They lock themselves inside a story they didn't consciously write, a story inherited from fear, society, or past experiences. The moment you break that story, your entire life trajectory changes. This first topic sets the foundation for everything we will build next. Because unless you confront this silent mistake, no strategy will stick, no technique will feel meaningful, and no opportunity will feel within reach. But once you release the belief that your present equals your future, you start seeing reality differently. You start seeing yourself differently. And you finally begin walking the same mental path that billionaires, visionaries, and world-class achievers walk. The path of expansion, not limitation. Topic 2. The hidden pattern. Billionaires use to escape average results. There's a pattern that billionaire researchers discovered. A pattern so consistent, so unmistakably present in the lives of high-level achievers that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It becomes obvious why some people ascend into extraordinary prosperity, while others remain trapped in ordinary outcomes. And this pattern has nothing to do with being naturally gifted, lucky, or born into the right family. It has everything to do with how a person responds to the fork-in-the-road moments that life presents to everyone. Here's the pattern. Wealthy individuals consistently choose to act before they feel ready, while the majority waits for certainty, perfect timing, or emotional comfort before taking even the smallest step. This one distinction sounds simple, but it has the magnitude of a psychological earthquake. Acting before you feel ready is an identity-level decision. It means you're operating from your future self, not your current circumstances. It means you're willing to be uncomfortable now so that you can be unrecognizable later. And it means that your faith in what you can become outweighs your fear of what you currently are. The average person waits for clarity, but high-level achievers create clarity through action. They understand a truth that most people never hear. Clarity doesn't precede movement. Clarity emerges from movement. Think about how many dreams get delayed because someone is waiting for the perfect moment. They wait until they have more time, more confidence, more knowledge, more financial stability, more encouragement, more permission. Yet billionaire research shows that these external conditions almost never arrive first. The leap comes before the net. The courage comes before the evidence. The decision comes before the certainty. Consider the early days of some of the most successful entrepreneurs. Their breakthrough moments rarely happened when everything was neatly aligned. Many started with nothing more than an idea, a problem they wanted to solve, and a willingness to step into the unknown. What set them apart was not superior intelligence, but a different relationship with uncertainty. They treated uncertainty as a laboratory, not a threat. They tested, experimented, iterated, failed, recalibrated, and moved again. Their forward motion created opportunities that standing still would have never revealed. Researchers studying billionaire behavior noticed something fascinating. Successful individuals don't just tolerate discomfort, they cultivate it. They see discomfort as a sign that they are expanding, stretching, opening new capacity. They do not interpret discomfort as danger, but as transformation in progress. Meanwhile, the average person interprets discomfort as a signal to stop. The moment they feel uncertain, they retreat. The moment they feel resistance, they pause. The moment they feel fear, they abandon the path entirely. And in doing so, they unintentionally reinforce a life that never evolves beyond familiar boundaries. But the billionaires who were interviewed repeated a theme. If you only move when you feel comfortable, you will never reach the thresholds that create exponential wealth. Because those thresholds exist outside your current identity, and stepping into them requires acting in ways your present self has not yet mastered. You cannot build a new life with the habits of your old one. You cannot build new results with the comfort level of your past. The version of you that achieves extraordinary success is not born. It is built. And it is built through decisions that stretch you beyond what you previously believed you could handle. Let's look at the deeper psychology involved. When someone is presented with an opportunity, their brain automatically compares the opportunity to their perceived identity. If the identity says, "I'm not the kind of person who does that," the opportunity becomes invisible. If the identity says, "I'm not ready," the opportunity becomes dangerous. If the identity says, "I don't know how," the opportunity becomes overwhelming. But the people who rise to prosperity operate with a different internal script. When an opportunity appears, their identity says, "I can grow into this." They don't evaluate opportunities based on who they are today. They evaluate them based on who they are becoming. This distinction is monumental. When you act from your future identity, you collapse the time between who you are and who you want to be. You begin behaving as the version of you who already achieved the results you desire, and your behaviors, decisions, emotional responses, and standards begin reorganizing your life accordingly. This is how the wealthiest individuals on the planet create momentum. They don't wait for life to change. They become the change that forces life to respond. Think about the stories of iconic founders who built empire-level companies. Over and over again, they took bold steps before the world believed in them. They invested their own money when the outcome was unclear. They hired people before they could afford to pay them. They launched products before they were fully refined. They trusted their vision before anyone validated it. Why? Because if they waited for the world to understand them, work with them, reward them, or approve them, they would still be waiting today. They moved because movement creates results, and results create belief, and belief creates momentum. The average person waits for belief first, and as a result, momentum never arrives. This hidden pattern reveals something profound about human potential. Every time you act before you feel ready, you teach your subconscious mind that you are capable of more than you previously believed. And slowly, action by action, your brain begins to expand its definition of who you are. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to succeed, and you start seeing yourself as someone destined to succeed. This subtle shift changes everything. It changes the emails you send, the risks you take, the conversations you initiate, the investments you make, the projects you commit to, the boundaries you enforce. Your life begins reorganizing itself around your new identity. Billionaire researchers often call this identity-driven behavior, and it is one of the strongest predictors of long-term wealth. When your behavior is driven by your future identity rather than your current circumstances, you no longer fall into the traps that keep most people stuck. You stop waiting. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You stop negotiating with your potential. Instead, you start acting decisively, boldly, strategically, not recklessly, but courageously. This is why wealthy individuals often say that their biggest breakthroughs did not happen when they acquired resources, but when they acquired courage. Courage was the resource. Courage was the seed. Courage was the turning point that separated their past from their future. And this courage did not appear magically. It was built, strengthened, and reinforced through consistent action taken before they felt ready. When you understand this pattern, you understand the mental blueprint behind prosperity. It's not about luck. It's not about talent. It's not even about intelligence. It's about developing the ability to move despite uncertainty, to choose growth over comfort, to act from your future identity, and to trust that clarity will follow. This is the quiet discipline that builds extraordinary wealth. This is the pattern that transforms ordinary people into visionaries, creators, leaders, and millionaires. And once you align your life with this pattern, everything begins to shift in your favor. Topic 3. Why billionaire thinkers rewrite the rules of reality, and how you can too. There's something profoundly different about the way billionaires interpret the world. It's not just their strategies, their intelligence, their network, or their opportunities. Those things are surface-level outcomes. The real difference lies in something deeper, more fundamental, almost invisible unless you know how to see it. Billionaires operate with a completely different set of mental rules. Rules that allow them to see possibilities where others see problems, to see leverage where others see limits, and to see opportunity where most people only see obstacles. They play life as if they were holding a hidden manual that everyone else somehow missed. But here's the truth that researcher after researcher has confirmed. This manual of possibility isn't given to them at birth. It isn't exclusive, and it isn't magical. It is developed, it is trained, it is chosen. And the moment someone learns to apply these new rules, their entire relationship with reality changes. They begin to influence outcomes that other people feel controlled by. They start orchestrating circumstances that others assume are fixed. They tap into levels of creativity, strategy, courage, and intuition that most people never access because they're too busy following the outdated mental rules they inherited from school, society, and past experiences. Let's break down what this means through real-life examples. When you look at the early decisions of wealth builders, their choices often seem almost unreasonable, not because they were reckless, but because they were operating from a different understanding of what was possible. Where the average person sees linear growth, billionaires see exponential potential. Where most people say, "This will take years," they ask, "How do we compress this into months?" Where most think in terms of resources they currently have, billionaires think in terms of resources they can create, attract, or leverage. It's not the world that is different for them, it's the lens through which they interpret the world. Research into ultra-high achievers consistently reveals that they have mastered the art of perception flexibility, meaning they can reinterpret a situation in multiple ways until they find the version that empowers them. Most people have rigid perceptions. If something looks difficult, they decide it is impossible. If something requires more skill, they decide they aren't capable. If something takes time, they decide it isn't worth it. But billionaire thinkers approach the same challenge with a different internal question. What interpretation of this moment makes me more powerful? And from that question emerges the mindset that rewrites reality. Consider the stories of wealth creators who transformed entire industries. They didn't simply identify a problem, they reimagined the meaning of the problem. Instead of thinking, "Someone should fix this," they thought, "What if this is my opportunity to lead?" Instead of thinking, "This is too big for me," they thought, "This is exactly big enough to become life-changing." Instead of thinking, "I don't know how," they thought, "I can learn what I need to know faster than anyone expects." This mental flexibility allows them to navigate uncertainty with creativity instead of fear. It gives them permission to try, fail, adjust, experiment, and ultimately succeed in ways most people never attempt. This is why billionaire researchers emphasize that mindset is not a cliché. It is a literal operating system that determines what your brain notices, ignores, prioritizes, or dismisses. If your operating system is outdated, everything in your life will feel harder than it needs to be. You will mistake friction for failure. You will treat obstacles as signs to retreat. You will interpret uncertainty as danger rather than evolution. But once you update the operating system, once you rewrite the internal rules, your brain begins filtering reality through a lens of possibility instead of limitation. Let's look deeper into one of the most important rules billionaire thinkers live by. The rule that reality is negotiable, not in a fantasy sense, but in a strategic, scientific, psychological sense. They understand that most limitations are not environmental. They are perceptual. If you change the way you think about an obstacle, you change the way you respond to it. If you change the way you respond, you change the outcome. And if you consistently change outcomes, you reshape your entire life. For example, many self-made millionaires experienced enormous setbacks early in their journey. Failed companies, financial loss, family pressure, rejection, even complete collapse. But instead of adopting the common narrative of, "This means I'm not meant for success," they rewrote the rule. They took the setback as raw data, not identity. They interpreted failure as part of the training process. They extracted lessons without emotional self-destruction. They reframed the meaning of difficulty as the price of admission for the life they wanted to build. And because they rewrote the rule began working for them. Reality began bending toward their interpretations instead of crushing them beneath their assumptions. There is something deeply empowering about realizing that everything in your life is influenced by the meanings you assign. The meanings you assign to your past, to your relationships, to your abilities, to the opportunities in front of you, to the setbacks behind you, and even to the emotions you feel throughout the day. Billionaire thinkers have trained themselves to assign empowering meanings to almost everything. When something feels overwhelming, they tell themselves that overwhelm is a sign of growth. When something feels unfamiliar, they tell themselves that unfamiliarity means they are entering new territory. When something feels risky, they remind themselves that risk is the gateway to reward. Their inner dialogue is not delusional. It is strategic. It fuels resilience, action, momentum, and confidence. This brings us to one of the most essential parts of rewriting reality: self-concept. Your self-concept is the story you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what kind of results you believe you deserve. Most people never update their self-concept. They operate their entire adult life with a narrative built during adolescence. But billionaires update their self-concept constantly. They expand their identity as they expand their skills. They adopt new archetypes as they take on new responsibilities. They evolve their internal definition of themselves to match the level of success they are reaching for. This is why they can make bold decisions without collapsing under self-doubt. Their self-concept supports the decision. It holds the weight of the responsibility. It matches the size of the opportunity. And this identity expansion becomes a feedback loop. Bigger actions create bigger results, which reinforce the bigger identity, which influences even bigger decisions. Meanwhile, the average person is trapped in a self-concept that is too small for the opportunities life is trying to give them. Their identity suffocates their potential. To rewrite reality, you must rewrite the rules you live by. The rules about money, the rules about success, the rules about effort, time, risk, failure, and persistence, the rules about what kind of life you believe you can build and what kind of person you believe you can become. When you realize that most of these rules were never chosen by you, they were absorbed, you gain the power to choose differently. And when you choose differently, your entire reality begins to shift. This is the mindset billionaire researchers refer to when they say the wealthy engineer their lives from the inside out. They don't try to control every external detail. They control their interpretation of those details. They don't try to predict every challenge. They focus on who they must become to overcome any challenge. They don't obsess over the environment. They obsess over the identity they bring into the environment, and because of that, they reshape their world rather than letting the world shape them. The moment you begin applying these rules, not intellectually but emotionally, you start stepping into the same field of possibility that wealth builders live in. You start seeing opportunities where you once saw dead ends. You start thinking creatively where you once thought cautiously. You start trusting yourself where you once hesitated. You start noticing synchronicities, insights, connections, ideas, and openings that were previously invisible to you. You begin to realize that your potential wasn't waiting for the world to change. It was waiting for you to change the way you interpret the world. Topic 4. The one decision that multiplies wealth faster than any strategy. If there is one discovery billionaire researchers emphasize more than any other, it's this. Wealth accelerates the moment a person decides to stop operating from fear and starts operating from responsibility. Not the heavy, burdensome kind of responsibility most people associate with pressure, but the empowering kind of responsibility that says, I am the creator of my outcomes, not the victim of my circumstances. This shift marks a before and after moment in every wealth builder's life. It is the inner turning point when someone stops waiting for conditions to improve and decides to become the force that improves their own conditions. Most people never reach this turning point because they misunderstand responsibility. They think it means self-blame. They think it means fault. They think it means carrying the weight of the world. But billionaire thinkers interpret responsibility completely differently. To them, responsibility is not about who caused a situation. It is about who now has the power to change it. This reframe is liberating. It removes helplessness and restores personal agency. It transforms challenges into opportunities and failures into valuable information. It creates a mental environment where wealth can grow because the person operating within that environment believes they hold the tools to shape their own destiny. When researchers interviewed ultra-successful individuals, they found a fascinating pattern. Before their greatest breakthroughs, almost all of them reached a moment of emotional exhaustion with their own excuses. They got tired of waiting for someone to save them. They grew bored of their own limitations. They became frustrated with the stories they had been repeating. And in that moment of raw honesty, they made a decision. Enough. I'm taking ownership of everything from this point forward. It wasn't a dramatic announcement to the world. It wasn't posted on social media. It was a private vow that rewired their internal operating system. From that decision forward, everything in their life changed. Opportunities they once overlooked suddenly became visible. People they once felt intimidated by became approachable. Risks they once avoided became manageable. Ideas they once doubted became possible. Their entire energy shifted, and life responded accordingly. This is the psychological phenomenon researchers refer to as identity alignment. When someone aligns their behavior with the identity of a creator rather than a reactor, the world begins to reorganize itself around their new level of intention. Responsibility is the engine of wealth because it restores control. You cannot build a prosperous life if you believe your outcomes are determined by external forces. A person who thinks everything is outside their control never takes the bold, decisive actions required for exponential success. They wait, they hope, they analyze, they hesitate. They live in reaction mode, constantly adjusting to whatever life throws at them. Meanwhile, the wealth builders of the world operate from creation mode. They initiate, they lead, they decide, they anticipate, they influence. This difference in mental posture creates an enormous gap in results. Think of the stories of entrepreneurs who built companies from scratch. They didn't wait for the market to give them permission. They didn't wait for the perfect economic climate. They didn't wait for validation from experts. They stepped into responsibility and chose to create something even when conditions were uncertain. And because they were willing to hold responsibility for their vision, they unlocked the momentum necessary to turn it into reality. It's important to understand that responsibility also changes how a person responds to failure. Most people treat failure as a dead end. They personalize it. They become emotionally entangled in it. They see it as a reflection of their worth. But billionaire thinkers treat failure as data. Failure becomes feedback. Failure becomes refinement. Failure becomes a strategic advantage because it reveals what doesn't work, allowing them to adjust quickly and move forward with more precision. They don't avoid failure. They utilize it. And they can only do this because they have taken responsibility for their journey. They are not immobilized by the emotional weight of things not going perfectly. One study on successful founders showed something incredibly compelling. Those who embraced responsibility were able to maintain clarity under pressure, while those who avoided responsibility collapsed under the same weight. The difference wasn't intelligence or background, it was mindset. Responsibility creates mental resilience because it shifts the locus of control inward. Instead of feeling attacked by challenges, the individual feels strengthened by them. They believe they have the capacity to evolve quickly, adapt strategically, and overcome whatever stands between them and their goals. This belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another powerful effect of responsibility is the way it impacts decision-making. When someone avoids responsibility, their decisions are driven by fear. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of discomfort, fear of uncertainty. Fear-based decisions always lead to contraction. They lead to smaller actions, smaller risks, smaller thinking, smaller results. But when someone embraces responsibility, their decisions are driven by intention. The intention to grow, to contribute, to build, to lead. Intention-based decisions create expansion. This is why people who operate from responsibility rise faster. Their decisions compound, their momentum compounds, their confidence compounds, and eventually their wealth compounds. Consider the example of individuals who dramatically change their financial trajectory by shifting from passively hoping for success to actively designing it. Their lives did not improve because they suddenly found a secret strategy. Their lives improved because they assumed responsibility for their mindset, their habits, their relationships, their skills, their environment, and their future. They stopped outsourcing their potential to luck or timing. They became the architect of their evolution. This is the decision that multiplies wealth faster than any financial tactic. No investment strategy, no business model, no algorithm, no shortcut will ever outperform a person who has taken full responsibility for creating their own success. Wealth flows toward individuals who operate with this level of ownership because they move with clarity, resilience, and intention. They don't wait for opportunities. They generate them. They don't hope for a better future. They build it. When billionaire researchers talk about the traits that predict long-term prosperity, responsibility appears at the top of the list every time. Because responsibility is the foundation for all other traits: self-discipline, resilience, creativity, leadership, innovation, consistency, and courage. Without responsibility, those traits remain dormant. With responsibility, those traits activate and begin shaping every aspect of a person's life. And here is the most empowering part. Responsibility is a choice. It doesn't require money, status, connections, or special talent. It only requires a moment of decision, a moment where you decide to stop negotiating with your potential and start leading your own life. A moment where you choose to move with purpose instead of hesitation. A moment where you reclaim the steering wheel of your destiny. This single decision can compress years of progress into months. It can redirect your entire life trajectory. It can unlock levels of prosperity that once felt unreachable. When someone adopts responsibility as their new standard, they begin to feel a powerful shift inside themselves. They feel more grounded, more capable, more intentional, more resourceful, more aligned with the life they want to create. Responsibility expands their identity, sharpens their focus, and elevates their expectations. And as their internal world transforms, their external world begins to reflect that transformation. The truth is simple and profound. Wealth is not just something you acquire, it is something you become. And the becoming begins with responsibility. The moment you choose to own your future is the moment your future begins to open in ways you never imagined. That is the turning point. That is the multiplier. That is the decision that sets billionaires apart. And it is available to you right now. Topic 5. The prosperity shift. How billionaires turn invisible opportunities into explosive growth. There's a moment in every wealth builder's journey when they begin noticing something the average person completely overlooks. Opportunity is everywhere, but it is invisible to the untrained mind. Billionaire researchers consistently find that ultra-successful individuals don't have better luck, easier lives, or extraordinary external advantages. What they do have is a trained perception that allows them to detect possibilities hidden inside ordinary moments, overlooked situations, and even inside problems that others run away from. This shift, from seeing life as a series of obstacles to seeing it as a field of strategic openings, is one of the most transformative prosperity skills a human being can develop. Most people believe opportunities come as breakthroughs, obvious, dramatic, brightly lit. But in reality, opportunities often arrive disguised as inconvenience, frustration, difficulty, or uncertainty. They don't announce themselves, they whisper. They're camouflaged inside situations that appear unremarkable or even discouraging. And because the average person isn't conditioned to look deeper, these opportunities pass by unnoticed. But billionaire thinkers operate differently. They approach the world with a psychological magnifying glass, examining challenges for hidden leverage, examining trends for early signals, examining patterns for untapped potential. They live in a state of heightened awareness, not frantic but intentional. And this awareness allows them to capitalize on openings that others dismiss. Consider the early stages of many well-known wealth creators. Almost every major breakthrough started with something small, something subtle, a repeated complaint they kept hearing from people, a gap in the market that no one had addressed, a personal frustration they decided to solve, a pattern of inefficiency they couldn't ignore. From the outside, these situations looked mundane, even trivial. But to someone trained in opportunity detection, they were seeds. Seeds that could grow into multi-million-dollar companies, new technologies, new industries, or entirely new ways of living. This ability to extract opportunity from the unglamorous corners of reality is what separates exponential wealth creators from linear thinkers. Researchers describe this skill as prosperity perception, the ability to interpret events, environments, and emotions through the lens of potential rather than limitation. When someone develops prosperity perception, their life begins to change in ways that feel almost magical. They start seeing profitable ideas everywhere. They notice unmet needs others ignore. They recognize emerging trends before they become obvious. They sense when a situation is shifting in their favor. They identify powerful collaborations waiting to happen. Their intuition sharpens, their creativity expands, and their decision-making becomes faster and more confident. One powerful example comes from individuals who built massive fortunes by simply paying attention to what frustrated them. Instead of complaining, they became curious. Instead of tolerating the inconvenience, they explored it. Instead of assuming someone else would solve it, they took responsibility. This shift, from emotional reaction to strategic observation, opened opportunities that became life-changing. Billionaire researchers discovered that many iconic success stories started with a single sentence. Why hasn't anyone fixed this yet? That question, simple and unglamorous, sparked some of the most profitable innovations of our time. But the truth is, anyone can develop this ability. Prosperity perception is not genetic. It's a trained habit. The moment you start asking different questions about your environment, you begin receiving different answers. When you stop interpreting challenges as threats and start interpreting them as signals, you gain access to a world of insight most people never see. This shift requires practice, courage, and a willingness to think independently, to detach from the collective mindset of scarcity and lean into a mindset of exploration. One of the most fascinating findings from billionaire psychology is their relationship with the unknown. While most people try to avoid unfamiliar territory, wealth builders intentionally walk into it because they know unfamiliarity often hides untapped opportunity. They treat uncertainty with respect, curiosity, and strategic optimism. They understand that the unknown is not an enemy, it is a frontier, and frontiers historically are where fortunes are made. Whether it's new technology, new markets, new habits, new industries, or new ideas, those who are willing to explore the unknown gain access to opportunities before they become mainstream. This leads to another essential part of the prosperity shift: pattern recognition. Billionaires are master observers. They look for clues, correlations, and inconsistencies. They study human behavior, industry trends, economic cycles, and cultural shifts with quiet intensity. They listen more than they talk. They analyze more than they assume. This allows them to detect opportunities years before they become visible to the masses. And once they find a pattern, they trust it, even when others don't understand it. This trust in their own observation is one of the core reasons they rise so quickly. They don't need the world to validate what their intuition and pattern recognition have already confirmed. Another powerful element of prosperity perception is emotional awareness. Wealth creators pay attention to the emotions that arise within them and the emotions they observe in others. They notice what people complain about, what people wish for, what people fear, what people avoid. Emotions reveal unmet needs, and unmet needs reveal opportunity. But only people who listen carefully can hear the signal beneath the noise. Billionaire thinkers treat emotions like data, internal and external, and this data becomes a roadmap leading them toward profitable solutions. The prosperity shift also involves reinterpreting one's own limitations. Most people view limitations as walls. Billionaires view limitations as invitations. If they lack a skill, they learn it or hire it. If they lack resources, they leverage or borrow them. If they lack time, they restructure their priorities. If they lack knowledge, they seek mentors or invest in education. They treat limitations as puzzles, not prisons. And the moment they solve the puzzle, they unlock a new level of potential. What's even more powerful is how this mindset compounds over time. Once someone trains themselves to see opportunity everywhere, their life becomes a constant flow of expansion. They become a magnet for ideas, connections, possibilities, and breakthroughs. Their mind operates at a higher vibrational frequency, one that aligns naturally with abundance instead of scarcity. They no longer waste energy worrying about what they lack. Instead, they focus on what they can create, what they can solve, what they can build, and the universe responds by opening more doors, sending more synchronicities, and offering more leverage points. Researchers have noted that this prosperity shift often creates a sense of inevitability in successful individuals. They begin to feel that growth is their natural state. They trust that new opportunities will always appear. They operate with calm confidence instead of anxious urgency. This internal certainty becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it influences their decisions, their tone, their presence, and their relationships. People want to work with individuals who exude certainty and possibility. They want to invest in them, collaborate with them, follow them, and support them. Prosperity perception creates prosperity partnerships, and prosperity partnerships create exponential outcomes. One of the most important realizations you can take from billionaire research is this: opportunities do not appear only to the wealthy. Opportunities appear to everyone, but only those who have trained their awareness can see them. This means the prosperity shift is available to you right now. You don't need more money, more status, or more experience to begin. You only need a willingness to expand your perception, a willingness to question your assumptions, a willingness to examine challenges more deeply, a willingness to trust your intuition, a willingness to explore the unknown. The moment you start perceiving the world through the lens of potential instead of limitation, your life will begin to transform in extraordinary ways. You'll start noticing ideas that excite you. You'll feel pulled toward new directions. You'll stumble upon insights at unexpected moments. You'll meet people who open doors for you. You'll recognize patterns that guide your decisions. And eventually, you'll look back and realize that prosperity wasn't something you chased. It was something you learned to see. Topic 6. The Inner Blueprint: How Billionaires Build Unshakable Self-Belief Before Wealth Arrives. There is a point in every wealth creator's journey where the external world has not yet changed, but internally, something irreversible has already shifted. Billionaire researchers refer to this as the pre-wealth self-concept, a stage where the individual begins to believe in a future version of themselves long before that version has materialized. This internal blueprint becomes the foundation upon which extraordinary prosperity is built. The external results eventually show up, but they arrive as a reflection of an identity that has already been upgraded. Most people misunderstand self-belief. They think it's a reward you receive after you succeed, like a prize handed out for good performance. But the wealthy understand something radically different. Self-belief is the fuel for success, not the outcome. It is the prerequisite, not the trophy. It is the cause, not the effect. Every billionaire interviewed in longitudinal mindset research reported that at some point early on, they made a quiet, deeply personal decision to trust in their potential, even when their environment offered no proof. They believed in themselves before the world believed in them. And that belief became the psychological engine that powered every decision, every risk, every step forward. This kind of belief isn't loud or arrogant. It's not the chest-thumping confidence most people imagine. Instead, it is calm, steady, anchored, and deeply rooted. It's the internal knowing that says, "I'm capable of more than I've ever shown," even while others see nothing but limitation. It's the whisper inside that insists, "This path is for me," even when you're surrounded by reasons to quit. It's the subtle but persistent sense that you are meant for something bigger, that the life you envision is not a fantasy, but a future waiting for your alignment. What billionaire researchers discovered is that the average person waits for external validation before forming this internal belief. They wait for encouragement, for perfect timing, for a sign, for a breakthrough, for momentum. But the wealthy do the opposite. They create internal validation first and allow external validation to catch up later. They understand that waiting for permission is the same as handing over the steering wheel of your destiny. No one can give you the belief required to build a life of abundance. You must generate that belief from within. Self-belief of this magnitude does not come from ego. It comes from intentional self-creation. It comes from the decision to see yourself not as the sum of your past, but as the architect of your future. It comes from releasing the narratives that once limited you. It comes from taking full responsibility for your evolution. And it comes from practicing a level of self-honesty most people avoid. Many wealthy individuals recall the moment they realized they had been underestimating themselves for years, not because they lacked talent or potential, but because they were carrying old stories written in childhood, stories shaped by environments that could not imagine the future they were destined to create. These stories influenced every action. They shaped what they tried, what they avoided, what they feared, and what they believed was possible. And once they recognized that these stories were not rooted in truth, but in conditioning, they began the process of rewriting them. Rewriting your internal narrative is one of the most powerful forms of personal transformation, especially for building wealth. The self you are today is built on meaning you assigned years ago. Meaning about failure, meaning about success, meaning about money, meaning about effort, meaning about your potential. If those meanings don't align with the life you are trying to create, you will unconsciously sabotage your progress. You will make small decisions when big decisions are needed. You will talk yourself out of opportunities meant for you. You will shrink when life is asking you to expand. The wealthy rise because they refuse to shrink. They expand internally first, even when nothing in their external world suggests expansion is justified. This is what billionaire researchers call identity before reality engineering. Before they build a company, they build a self-concept capable of leading a company. Before they accumulate wealth, they cultivate a mindset capable of managing wealth. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to navigate emotions in a way that fuels growth rather than derailing it. This single factor shows up in nearly every success trajectory, and it often determines who keeps moving forward when the journey becomes uncomfortable, unpredictable, or overwhelming. Most people believe success is primarily strategic. They think it's about having the right idea, the right plan, the right training, the right network. Before they step into visibility, they strengthen the internal stability necessary to handle visibility. They understand that your life will never exceed your identity. Therefore, your identity must be upgraded before your life can transform. Self-belief also influences persistence, which is one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. People who lack self-belief give up quickly because every setback feels like confirmation of inadequacy. But those with strong internal conviction interpret setbacks entirely differently. They see setbacks as information. They see failure as feedback. They see obstacles as part of the initiation process. Their belief is not fragile. It is forged through repetition, adversity, and self-awareness. The result is a level of emotional resilience that allows them to keep going when others stop. One of the most surprising discoveries in billionaire psychology is that many of them experienced deep insecurity early on. Some lacked financial security, some lacked support, some lacked education, some lacked direction. But they each found a way to transform insecurity into fuel rather than paralysis. They used doubt as a catalyst to build competence. They used uncertainty as motivation to take action. And little by little, action by action, their belief strengthened. It wasn't overnight transformation, it was self-sculpting. This reveals another truth. Confidence is created through evidence you give yourself. When you keep promises to yourself, your self-belief grows. When you take aligned action, your self-belief grows. When you choose courage over comfort, your self-belief grows. When you prioritize long-term vision over short-term fear, your self-belief grows. Every step forward becomes a brick in the foundation of an unshakable internal identity. Billionaire researchers often describe wealthy individuals as identity builders, not just business builders. Their wealth is the external projection of an internal architecture, and that architecture is made up of habits, beliefs, emotional patterns, decisions, and self-concepts that were built intentionally over time. They didn't wait for life to shape them. They shaped themselves to meet the life they wanted. Self-belief also has a magnetic effect. People naturally gravitate toward those who believe in themselves. Investors trust them, partners support them, teams follow them, clients resonate with them. Their belief becomes the emotional anchor for others. And this magnetism creates opportunities that would never appear for someone who radiates doubt or insecurity. Wealthy individuals understand this social dynamic instinctively. They know that belief is not just an inner advantage. It is an external asset that influences how the world responds to them. But here is the most empowering part. Unshakable self-belief is not something only billionaires can access. It is available to anyone who chooses to build it. It is a skill. It is a practice. It is an identity choice. You don't need extraordinary circumstances to create it. You need awareness, intention, courage, and consistency. You need to question the old stories that hold you back. You need to speak to yourself differently. You need to take actions that reinforce the identity you want to embody. At some point in your journey, you must decide that your belief in your future will be stronger than your memories of your past. You must decide that your inner voice will guide you more than external noise. You must decide that you are willing to grow into the person you are capable of becoming, even if that version feels distant right now. This is the inner blueprint of prosperity. It is the invisible architecture behind extraordinary success. And once you begin building it, your external world will eventually rearrange itself to match your upgraded identity. That is the power of unshakable self-belief. That is the foundation upon which wealth is built. Topic 7. The Wealth Accelerator. Why emotional mastery separates the prosperous from the struggling. If you look closely at the lives of the world's most prosperous individuals, you'll begin to notice a pattern that billionaire researchers emphasize again and again. The true separator between those who rise and those who struggle isn't intelligence, talent, opportunity, or luck. It's emotional mastery. But strategy without emotional stability is useless. A brilliant plan collapses the moment fear takes over. A billion-dollar idea dies in the hands of someone who panics. A powerful opportunity dissolves the moment doubt convinces someone they aren't ready. Emotions, unmanaged, become the invisible chokehold around a person's potential. And this is where the prosperous rise above the average. They learn to master their emotional world long before their external world transforms. Emotional mastery is the ability to feel deeply without being controlled by what you feel. It's the ability to navigate uncertainty without losing clarity. It's the capacity to hold fear without allowing fear to dictate your decisions. It's the skill of noticing frustration, pressure, disappointment, or insecurity, and choosing intentional action rather than unconscious reaction. Wealthy individuals cultivate this capacity because they know that every step of the journey will demand new levels of emotional intelligence. The stakes rise, the responsibility rises, the visibility rises, the risks rise. And without emotional mastery, a person cannot rise with them. One of the most fascinating findings billionaire psychologists discovered is that ultra-successful individuals experience the same emotions as everyone else: fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of exposure, fear of not being good enough. But instead of interpreting these emotions as reasons to stop, they interpret them as part of the process. They don't expect the path to be emotionally comfortable. They understand that discomfort is a companion, not an enemy. They allow emotions to be present without letting those emotions determine the trajectory of their life. This reinterpretation of emotional experience gives them immense power. When an average person feels fear, they often stop. When a wealthy person feels fear, they get curious. They ask what the fear is pointing toward. They ask what growth is available on the other side. They ask whether the fear is signaling danger or expansion. This emotional reframing shifts everything because it allows them to move while others freeze. It gives them access to opportunities that require courage, and courage is the gateway to every financial breakthrough. Another key part of emotional mastery is the ability to remain resilient under pressure. Pressure destroys those who haven't built emotional stability, but it unlocks greatness in those who have. Many entrepreneurs experienced moments of intense pressure early in their journeys. Moments when everything was uncertain, when finances were unstable, when expectations were heavy, when decisions had high consequences. Those who lacked emotional mastery collapsed. They gave up, shut down, or made catastrophic decisions out of panic. But those who developed emotional mastery used pressure as a sharpening force. They learned to breathe through it, think through it, and lead through it. And with each cycle of pressure, they became more capable of handling bigger responsibilities. This is why emotional mastery is a wealth accelerator. The larger your emotional capacity, the larger the opportunities you can hold. People without emotional mastery can only handle opportunities that match their comfort level. People with emotional mastery can handle opportunities that exceed their current experience. They can take risks. They can navigate setbacks. They can make decisions without emotional chaos clouding their judgment. Their emotional world becomes an asset rather than a liability. Another compelling insight from billionaire research is how wealthy individuals regulate their internal states. While the average person reacts impulsively to emotions, the prosperous respond intentionally. They take time to recalibrate. They step back to reflect. They breathe, meditate, journal, walk, or strategize before making important decisions. They understand that a dysregulated emotional state leads to poor choices, and poor choices lead to poor outcomes. Emotional regulation becomes a competitive advantage because it protects their decision-making from emotional distortion. But perhaps the most transformational part of emotional mastery is how it affects the relationship someone has with failure. Failure devastates those who tie their identity to outcomes. They interpret failure as personal, final, or humiliating. But prosperous individuals master the emotional experience of failure. They allow themselves to feel the sting but refuse to attach meaning that weakens them. They extract lessons, adjust direction, and move forward. Their emotional resilience becomes so strong that failure loses its power to define them. And when failure cannot define you, it cannot stop you. This emotional independence becomes magnetic. People trust individuals who stay grounded in chaos. They follow leaders who remain clear under stress. They invest in people who exude emotional composure. They collaborate with individuals who are not controlled by fear or impulsivity. Emotional mastery becomes a currency that attracts resources, partners, opportunities, and influence. It is the silent foundation beneath powerful leadership. Another important dimension is how emotional mastery impacts self-sabotage. Most people sabotage their progress not because they are incapable, but because they are emotionally triggered and unaware of how to regulate themselves. They avoid tasks that evoke discomfort. They procrastinate because of fear. They shrink because of insecurity. They lash out because of pressure. They disconnect because of self-doubt. Self-sabotage is not a logical problem. It is an emotional one. Billionaire thinkers understand this deeply. They study their emotional patterns. They notice when fear or insecurity shows up. They interrupt the pattern. They replace emotional reactivity with intentional action. And because of this, they move forward consistently, while others move only sporadically. Emotional mastery also amplifies intuition, something many wealthy individuals credit as one of their greatest assets. When your emotional world is chaotic, your intuition becomes muffled. But when your emotions are balanced, your internal signals become clear. You can sense opportunities, potential risks, timing, people, alignment. You develop an internal navigation system that guides you with surprising accuracy. Emotional clarity leads to intuitive clarity. Intuitive clarity leads to strategic precision. Strategic precision leads to accelerated success. The wealthy also understand that emotional mastery unlocks creativity. Creativity thrives in a regulated nervous system. When your mind is calm and open, ideas flow, solutions emerge. Innovation becomes natural. But when your emotions are flooded with panic or scarcity, creativity shuts down. You can't think expansively when you feel constricted. Emotional mastery opens the mental space required for creative thinking, and creative thinking is one of the most valuable skills in a world that rewards innovation. Another powerful aspect of emotional mastery is the ability to delay gratification. Wealth builders are masters at holding emotional tension over long periods without giving in to impulses. They resist the urge to take the easiest path. They resist emotional cravings for immediate comfort. They resist temptations that derail long-term goals. This discipline isn't cold or rigid. It's emotionally intelligent. They understand that long-term prosperity requires long-term emotional stability. They are willing to endure temporary discomfort for permanent elevation. But perhaps the most beautiful part of emotional mastery is that it creates internal freedom. When you are no longer controlled by fear, doubt, insecurity, overwhelm, or emotional chaos, you experience a level of freedom most people never reach. You make decisions based on intention rather than emotion. You pursue dreams without the weight of internal resistance. You move confidently through uncertainty because you trust your ability to remain steady. This internal freedom becomes external prosperity because you are no longer sabotaging your own potential. And here's the truth. Billionaire researchers emphasize, emotional mastery is learnable. It is not reserved for the wealthy. It is not genetic or exclusive. It is a practice, one that anyone can develop with awareness, discipline, and intention. Every time you choose focus over distraction, clarity over panic, courage over fear, reflection over reaction, and purpose over impulse, you strengthen your emotional mastery. This is the wealth accelerator that changes everything. It allows you to hold bigger opportunities, withstand bigger challenges, make smarter decisions, and rise with every setback. Emotional mastery gives you the stability to step into higher levels of success and the capacity to sustain it. Because wealth isn't just acquired, it's maintained. And emotional mastery is the foundation that allows prosperity to grow without crumbling. Topic 8. The Prosperity Equation. How daily habits quietly build a lifetime of wealth. One of the greatest discoveries billionaire researchers ever made is that wealth is rarely created through dramatic breakthroughs. It is created through quiet, consistent daily habits that compound over time. The world sees the outcomes, the companies, the investments, the success stories. But what the world rarely sees is the discipline beneath it all, the invisible system of habits that shape a wealthy mind long before money ever arrives. Most people believe prosperity begins with a big moment, the perfect idea, the lucky opportunity, the sudden breakthrough. But billionaires know the truth. Prosperity begins with repetition, with intentional living, with the decision to build habits that reflect the future you want, not the past you came from. Habits are the infrastructure of success, the foundation that determines how much pressure, opportunity, and growth a person can hold. Without the right habits, even the best opportunities collapse. Wealthy individuals build habits that align with their identity. They don't wait to feel motivated. They act in alignment with who they are becoming. They read, learn, plan, reflect, and take small steps every day that reinforce their vision. These actions seem insignificant in the moment, but over months and years, they create an internal transformation so powerful that the external world eventually has no choice but to mirror it. This is where most people get stuck. They underestimate the power of small behaviors repeated consistently. They look for intensity instead of consistency. They try to change everything at once, only to burn out. Wealthy individuals understand compounding. Not just financial compounding, but emotional, mental, and behavioral compounding. A tiny daily improvement becomes a massive shift when multiplied over time. Billionaires don't chase overnight success. They engineer long-term transformation through habit. Their routines also protect their emotional and mental state. A person cannot build wealth while living in chaos. Habits create stability. Morning rituals that ground them. Learning rituals that expand them. Planning rituals that align them. When life becomes stressful or uncertain, these habits act as an anchor, preventing emotional turbulence from derailing their progress. Their habits become a silent support system that carries them through difficult seasons. Time management is another key element of billionaire habits. They treat time like a currency far more valuable than money. They protect it fiercely. They automate decisions. They eliminate distractions. They prioritize work that aligns with their purpose. They understand that a person's future is shaped not by how hard they work, but by what they repeatedly give their attention to. Their habits create clarity around what matters, and clarity accelerates success. The most powerful part of billionaire habits is how they build self-trust. Every time you follow through on a habit, you prove to yourself that you are reliable. You strengthen your identity. You increase your confidence. Wealthy individuals trust themselves because they have built evidence, day after day, that they can rely on their own discipline. And when self-trust grows, courage grows. And when courage grows, opportunity grows. What researchers found is that habits are not just actions. They are identity statements. When you wake up early, you confirm you are someone who values your time. When you invest in learning, you confirm you are someone committed to growth. When you take consistent action, you confirm you are someone capable of momentum. Your habits are shaping who you are becoming, whether you are conscious of it or not. The good news is that you don't need wealth to begin building prosperity habits. You can start today. You can start now. You can decide that your habits will reflect your future, not your fears. You can build routines that support clarity, discipline, and vision. You can make small decisions that slowly transform your self-concept. Because prosperity is not created by one big leap. It is created by thousands of intentional steps. Wealth is a lifestyle before it is a result. And that lifestyle is built through daily habits that compound into a future you once thought was out of reach. Prosperity belongs to those who prepare for it, and preparation begins with what you choose to do today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Topic 9. The Wealth Reality Shift. Why your environment shapes your future more than your dreams. There is a truth billionaire researchers repeat with absolute certainty. Your environment influences your future far more than your intentions, your discipline, or even your dreams. People love to believe they are independent thinkers, that their ambition alone will carry them into prosperity. But the reality is simple and often uncomfortable. Your environment is silently sculpting your mindset, your habits, your expectations, and your identity every single day. You can want success with your entire heart, but if you remain in an environment that reinforces limitation, scarcity, or stagnation, your growth becomes almost impossible. When studying ultra-successful individuals, researchers discovered a powerful pattern. Before their income grew, before opportunities appeared, before confidence developed, something else shifted first: their environment. Not necessarily their physical home, but their emotional, social, intellectual, and energetic surroundings. The people they allowed into their life changed. The conversations they engaged in changed. The standards they tolerated changed. The beliefs circulating around them changed. Their environment evolved, and their life evolved with it. Most people underestimate this. They assume they can dream big while staying surrounded by small-thinking people. They assume they can expand while living inside routines that keep them comfortable and complacent. They assume they can build wealth while immersing themselves in spaces that normalize struggle. But environment is stronger than willpower. You cannot consistently rise in a space that continually pulls you back down. The prosperous understand this instinctively. They curate their environment with intention. They seek out people who elevate their thinking, challenge their assumptions, and expand their vision. They remove themselves from draining conversations and unsupportive relationships. They choose environments that demand their evolution rather than environments that justify their excuses. They know their surroundings are either building their future or burying it. Your environment influences your identity far more subtly than you realize. When you surround yourself with pessimism, your ambition begins to dim. When you immerse yourself in scarcity, abundance feels unrealistic. When you spend time around those who settle, you unconsciously lower your own standards to match. But when you place yourself around people who think bigger, act boldly, and pursue excellence, your internal world expands. What once felt extraordinary becomes normal. What once felt unreachable becomes expected. Even your digital environment matters. The content you consume, the voices you listen to, the narratives you internalize, all of it reshapes your beliefs. If you constantly absorb negativity, drama, fear, or mediocrity, your mind becomes conditioned to anticipate limitation. But if you intentionally expose yourself to ideas, stories, and people who embody possibility, your perception of what's possible for you begins to transform. Your emotional environment matters as well. Chaos, disorganization, and constant stress keep your mind in survival mode. And a mind stuck in survival cannot imagine, innovate, or take bold steps. Wealth requires emotional spaciousness and mental clarity. The prosperous cultivate environments that support focus and creativity. They organize their lives so their mind can stay open, not overwhelmed. Even the energetic environment, yes, the emotional frequency of the people around you, has a profound effect. Humans naturally calibrate to the energy of others. If you're surrounded by fear-based energy, you absorb it. But when you surround yourself with grounded, optimistic, forward-moving individuals, your own energy rises to match theirs. This is why the wealthy gravitate towards circles that challenge them to be better. What billionaire researchers discovered is that environment influences behavior automatically. You don't need to try harder. You need to surround yourself better. Behavior follows environment. Growth follows environment. Identity follows environment. And wealth follows identity. The beautiful truth is that you don't need money to begin shifting your environment. You need awareness and intention. You can curate your digital influences. You can adjust the energy in your home. You can seek out people who inspire you. You can protect your attention, your time, your mindset, and your emotional space. You can choose environments that reflect where you're going, not where you've been. Because in the end, your environment is either your silent accelerator or your silent anchor. And when you redesign it with intention, you redesign your destiny. Topic 10. The moment. Everything changes. Choosing the future you were meant to live. There comes a moment in every transformational journey when a person realizes that nothing in their life will change until they change. Not the economy, not their circumstances, not the people around them. And this moment is the turning point billionaire researchers refer to as the internal ignition. It's the moment someone stops waiting for luck, permission, or perfect timing. and finally decides to step into the identity they were meant to become. Everything in this video, from belief to environment to habits to emotional mastery, has been leading toward this moment. Because prosperity is not a single strategy or a secret formula. It is a decision to stop shrinking, a decision to stop repeating the past, a decision to stop betraying your own potential, a decision to rise, even if you're rising alone at first, a decision to build a life that reflects the truth of who you are, not the limitations you once accepted. This is the moment where your future begins to shift from possibility into inevitability. People who create extraordinary success are not different by birth. They are different by decision. They choose to think differently, see differently, act differently, and believe differently. They choose to align their lives with the identity of someone who deserves abundance. They choose to pursue the version of themselves that scares them, because that version is powerful. And they choose to walk toward a future they cannot yet see, trusting that clarity will come once they begin moving. The reason most people never experience prosperity is not because they lack opportunity. It's because they never make this internal decision. They try to change their life while holding on to an identity that belongs to an older version of themselves. But you cannot build a new future with the mindset of your past. At some point, you must step forward. You must expand. You must claim the life that is trying to reach you. This is the invitation of prosperity, to become the person your goals require, to live with intention instead of hesitation, to cultivate habits that elevate you instead of habits that drain you, to surround yourself with environments that challenge you instead of environments that confine you, to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles, to trust your intuition more than your fear, and above all, to believe in a future so deeply that every action you take begins to align with it. Your life will not change in one day, but it can change with one decision. A decision powerful enough to redirect your focus, restructure your habits, expand your identity, and ignite a momentum that cannot be stopped. This is how every wealth creator begins. Not with certainty, not with perfection, but with a decision to say, I will not live small anymore. And now, standing at the end of this video, you are at that same crossroads. You can let these insights inspire you temporarily, or you can let them transform you permanently. You can close this video and return to your familiar patterns, or you can step into the identity that has been waiting for you all along. You are capable of far more than you've allowed yourself to believe. Your future is not written yet. Your potential is not exhausted. Your story is not complete. And the life you desire is not unrealistic. It is simply unused potential waiting for your courage to activate it. This is your moment, the moment everything changes, and the moment you choose the future you were meant to live. If this message spoke to you, if something inside you woke up, if you felt even a small shift in the direction of your future, then don't let this moment fade. Take action right now. Subscribe to the Success and Prosperity Code channel so you never miss the insights, tools, and breakthroughs that can transform your life from the inside out. Like this video if it inspired you, because it tells YouTube that this is the kind of content the world needs more of. Comment below and tell me what part hit you the deepest. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And share this video with someone you care about. Prosperity grows when it's multiplied. This is your journey. This is your evolution. And this is the moment you choose to rise. Together, we're building a future filled with abundance, clarity, and unstoppable momentum. Your next level begins now.